Well, Judy, thank you so much for participating in our Rewilding community program. It's really wonderful to have you here.
Yeah, so it's a real honor and a privilege to have you here.
Oh, well, I feel that it's a privilege to be with you all anytime. So
Oh,
Thank
I'm
thank
you.
you.
delighted to be here.
And Angus and I have really had the benefit of not just seeing Judy speak at conferences, but she was a participant in a program that we ran for 2 years called the Soul Centered Series. She was one of the weekend speakers, and both times that she was there, it was really delightful, and we're
Oh,
really impacted by the depth of her understanding. And for those of you in the rewilding community that don't know, you probably most of you do, but the spiritual and philosophical underpinnings behind our metaphor for rewilding comes from the teachings of Sydney Banks and what he shared with the world. And it's really our way of continuing to share the understanding with people in a way that resonates with us. But Judy is one of the people that was able to learn from him directly, and she's had her own practice as a resiliency coach for over 30 years. She's been a very successful businesswoman, having her own medical records practice, and then she worked with Pransky and Associates with corporations and executives, and then went on to the University of West Virginia and became part of the medical school faculty there. So she's had this and I'm not even listing. She's been a journalist. Like there's just so many things. I can't even say them all here.
I'm just old
So she's
for
an
me. I've just
incredible
been around a
woman.
while.
Amazing. And just we're really looking forward to having this conversation. And one of the things that was on Angus's and my mind when we were thinking about speaking with Judy is really looking at how the understanding of the principles that was shared by Sydney Banks really is aligned with social justice. And Judy's someone who's been very active in the areas of social justice in her life.
Mhm.
And so we thought, who better to have us have a conversation about this, and what better time than now to be having a conversation about this. So thank you so much, Judy.
You're welcome. That's true.
So, you mentioned that you shared a little bit about this at the London conference, and I don't know if you've watched it yet, but I haven't caught up on all of the recordings yet from
Yeah,
the
no
conference.
problem.
So
There were
I'd love for you to just kind of start wherever it makes sense for you to look
yeah.
at how you see these the understanding and how that works with the tenets of social justice.
Well, it occurred to me as I was thinking about all of the issues that are confronting the planet right now. It's kind of like climate has gone into the background, but it's getting to be hurricane season. That's going to be back. And we have all of the injustice and policing, and we have the political issues that are coming up. We're kind of in a human turmoil
Mm-hmm.
all over the world for different reasons. I mean, it's just a very unsettled time in humanity. And I was thinking about, I had to do a talk on the principles at the conference. It was one of many,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a breakout session. And I decided I would talk about the principles as a basis for a moral universe, and the fact that that we're a very small part of the universe, but we're kind of a big part of the planet. So within the universe, our planet is a tiny thing, and on the planet, we're tiny things. But our tiny presence on the planet can have a huge impact on all species, all living things.
Mm-hmm.
And because we are the sentient beings with free will and the ability to know that we have free will, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so I thought, being essentially the dominant species at the moment, I'm not making any future predictions, but being the dominant species, we have a special opportunity uh, to take our understanding of the principles to heart and really look at what is the connection between all of us and all living things and the universe, to look at it as kind of an expanding ripple. And it occurred to me that when we act from insecurity, which we've done and kind of plundered the resources of other living things and so on, um, there are always consequences when people act from insecurity. And on a very tiny level within a family, the most insecure member of the family can upset the entire dynamic of the family and can create havoc. And the most insecure species on a planet of
Mhm.
living things can upset the balance of the planet. And essentially, to the degree that we as humanity have become increasingly insecure, we have lost the feeling of connection that creates respect and love and understanding for all creatures and all things. And all we have to do is address the state of mind. And I was, thinking about that earlier when I was reflecting on Sid's last talk
Mhm.
that I heard before he died at the last Sid school that he was able to attend for a brief time. And he said, don't get discouraged. Don't look around and get discouraged by what other people are doing or what's happening around you or by external events. But remember, that your job is to keep yourself in pure thought, to keep your thinking clear and keep yourself quiet and calm and full of love and understanding, and then to be able to share that. And it's always going to happen one soul at a time. But he said, I was thinking about all that we've learned about the virus, about the exponential growth. If one
Mhm.
person gets it, but they share it with three other people, then, there's this huge explosion because they share it with three and share it with three. And, it's a geometric expansion.
Mhm.
And I thought, that's really what's starting to happen with the principles. It seems like every year there's thousands more people in more countries that have picked up the idea and so on, and it's spreading very fast. And that gives me great hope that, one soul at a time, people will wake up and think, oh, wait, why would I kill an elephant? You know, oh, wait, why would I cut down this forest? Now it'd be nice if it was happening faster, and it would be nice if it was happening, among people and politics and so on and so forth, but it's happening. And to the degree that we can keep our bearings, to take Sid's advice, to keep our bearings and keep our own thoughts uh, calm,
Mhm.
and not give away our peace of mind to other people's upset, and share from the heart and not get caught up in all the negativity and insecurity, then we have a chance to contribute to the exponential growth of love and understanding that will ultimately, hopefully, prevail. Because if it doesn't, we will not be the dominant species, because we
Mm.
sow the seeds of our own destruction in a sense. And I think that, for a lot of people that are very cognizant of science and of the principles, the explosion of this virus is like the planet saying, okay, you got to stop.
Mhm.
You just got to stop. And I think for a lot of people, when we did stop, for a period of time in March and April and part of May, when we did stop, it was amazing how fast the planet started to heal. And I think the most symbolic thing that I saw to show that was, when I was in the last time I was in India, which was in 1999, and I landed in New Delhi. And honestly, the air was so filthy
Mhm.
that if you blew your nose, you would get
Mhm.
ash and grime. I mean, it was an unbelievable. If you happen to have your mouth open, and like I tried to run, I at that time was still a runner, and I tried to take a little run, and I was breathing through my mouth, and I had grit in my teeth. I
Mhm.
mean, the air was just thick, and you couldn't see very far. I mean, you could see maybe a block.
Mhm.
And I was looking at pictures right after the big shutdown, a few weeks or maybe 3 weeks after, and I saw a picture from a vantage point that I recognized having been at in Delhi, and you could see the Himalayas. You
Wow.
could see the Himalayas. I mean, it's you could Google it. It's out there somewhere because it was published during that to show how the air was clearing. And I thought to myself, I wonder how many children in New Delhi are astonished
Mhm.
that they've never seen very far, and suddenly they look up and there are these incredibly beautiful
Wow.
mountains right beyond right at their horizon, and they didn't even know they were there because they'd never seen them. I wonder how many adults living in Delhi, because it's been a long time, have never seen that. And I wonder if that affects them, if they think, wow, that's amazing. The air is clean. But that's what's possible, when we come to care about each other and about other living things and about the planet as a living thing, which it is. Then as we find that in our hearts, I think we make choices that are going to be much more geared towards the survival of all, rather than the survival of what we consider to be the most important thing, us. And so to me, the principles lay the groundwork for that. When you really feel deep in your heart, I know I'm kind of going on here, but when you really feel deep in your heart that mind connection, the formless sort of shared energy of all things, that the same energy that it allows whales to sing to each other, and that allows birds to find their way north and south, and the butterflies to fly to thousands of miles to where they want to have their families. When that same energy is a neutral, giving, living force, it doesn't favor any one thing. It's the energy of all things, the intelligent energy of all things. And we happen to be fortunate that that in the evolution and development of humanity as one of those things, we also were given the gift to be able to notice what we're doing. So we have the consciousness is kind of like both the entryway into our experience of reality, and also the ability that we have to look behind us and see where it came from. And I don't know whether other species have that. How would we ask them, since we can't talk to them? But sometimes I think my cat does. It's exceptionally bright. But and I know a lot of people think their dogs are smarter than they are, so who knows? And I certainly think when you read some of the stories, I mean, I'm very fascinated for some reason with elephants, and reading about, just how elephants, grieve their dead and care for each other, and the things that elephants do as a family of elephants is just so astonishing to me. And I think, there's something, just because we can't talk to them doesn't mean they can't communicate with each other at a very deep level. We just don't know it. And I saw a thing recently where a pianist who was also fascinated with elephants had taken a piano, wheeled an upright piano into the wild where the elephants were somewhere, and started to play. And there were a couple of elephants that really loved it, and they came and sat while he played. And they were putting their trunk over the top of the piano to kind of see what was going on down there, but they didn't in any way endanger him. They were just very appreciative. And after he finished playing for them, he played quite a while. There was all on YouTube somewhere. Again, you can find it. After he finished playing for them, they allowed him to pet their trunks, and it's not like he knew them.
Right, these are wild elephants.
Yeah. So this was the wild elephant saying, "Wow, this is for us," and I like it. And so we should thank him. I mean, that's what I was getting from that, is that the elephants were being thankful. So he started going back and doing that often. And I thought, isn't that that's a very touching thing. And there's stories like that all over the world, if you look for them, that of interspecies caring, just as there are stories of human beings who care deeply for other human beings. And that is the purity. That's pure mind, pure consciousness, pure thought, before we get our opinions in there.
Yeah. I love Judy in the Soul Centered series. The first time that you did a class there, and you told that story about the trees and
Oh yeah.
the it's like it's like the forest internet where there's
Yeah.
this sort of symbiotic relationship between the trees and the fungal below the forest
Yeah.
fungus below the forest floor. And I was actually just thinking of that the other day, in terms of how, you know, you spoke of the mother tree and how
Yeah.
she kind of looks after the flock in a way, and she looks
Right.
after the forest.
Right.
And it made me think about, you know, the social justice issues, about how, you know, here are the trees kind of looking out for each other and looking after each other, you know, distributing nutrients and
Yeah.
signals that are for the well-being of the forest. And it made me think about those social justice issues. I know at
Yeah.
the time you were talking about it, referring to it as a beautiful intelligence behind life story.
Yeah.
But it made me think about how, you know, as a species, you know, in terms of the principles and the innate well-being, that's really available to all of us. And here it is reflected in how the forest runs. It's like,
Right.
how do we do that as human beings?
Yeah. It's almost like, fractals, that everything is another version of the same thing.
Right.
But, and the thing that was, it's funny, this is just a sweet thing, but I know Dickon loves trees and he loves to walk in
Yes.
the woods and everything. And Dickon's a good friend of mine. So, and I was talking to Dickon about the trees, and the network of
Mm-hmm.
root system, that intercommunications, and the fact that they're very dependent on the mushrooms
Mm-hmm.
that are underground, that's all part of that system. The mushrooms kind of are the communications network, like the wiring,
Yes.
and the mycelium is the wiring. And yeah, and Dickens said he was reading about it in some article that he was reading, and somebody referred to it as the wood wide web. www.tree. Yeah. So I thought that was very sweet. But I think the more we look into both the macrocosm of the universe and the microcosm of tiny invisible things, the more we realize that everything is connected, and everything functions in conjunction, like with other things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing that shocked me first when I was very young, I remember Life magazine was a big deal when I was growing up, and you couldn't wait for it to, just had all these wonderful pictures all the time. And at one point, somebody had invented the most powerful microscope to date. And and they showed pictures of all these little creatures that are part of the human body that we don't know that are there. And one of them was of the little creatures that live on our eyelashes. And I was looking at, and it was a fully formed little being. It had eyes and legs and, little antenna, and it was kind of cute, actually. But I
My
was just the
goodness.
thought of these things living on our eyebrows,
Freaking
eyelashes.
me out a little bit.
I know. Well, it sort of creeped me out, and then it didn't, because then the first thought I had as a young, I don't know, preteen girl was, I wonder if we're living on somebody's eyelash and don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that little creature doesn't know that the eyelash is part of this gigantic creature. It's just like, that's the world of that little creature, is your eyelashes. And that's the only world that it knows. And I thought, like the little things that do your digestion and everything in your stomach, that's the only world they know. They don't have any idea that there's a beating heart, and there's, sports and activities and laughter and parties and hangovers and all the things that the human being goes through. They just know their job in that little area of the world that they live in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very humbling in a way, because it is kind of like our planet in the scope of the universe. I mean, we're just a dot.
Yeah.
But when we're on the planet, that's our world. That's it.
Yeah.
So, when you start to see all of that, the interconnectedness of all things, and the fact that their interdependence of all things. I mean, it's quite astonishing that I remember somebody at WVU, when I was having a conversation with one of my students, who said, it kind of shows you that the universe has put a great deal of attention to detail.
Hmm.
And when you look through a microscope, you realize that. And also sometimes when you look at some of these creatures, like you look at some of the little creatures in the sea that are so interesting with all the, colors and the little fluffy fins, and it's amazing. And you think, and you look at flowers and you think, and also a great deal of attention to beauty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unnecessary, beautiful things that are just there because they're beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when you start to really feel an appreciation for that, it makes everything that we think about most of the time kind of meaningless.
Right.
It's like, yeah, and I really mean that. And even in terms of what's going on now in the world, when you think about some of the petty conversations that people have over everything, and you realize that we could be talking about our role in the universe of all things, but no, we're talking about why I won't wear a mask, or why I will wear a mask, or why, and it's so small.
Yeah.
Our personal thinking is so tiny, and it's hardly worth it. And I think the more that I've gotten involved in the principles, the more I've seen that my personal thinking is somewhat interesting sometimes, but most of the time it's just ridiculous. You know? And if it's interesting and it entertains me, that's great, that's fine. But it probably won't entertain anybody else, and why give it a lot of time?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the answer is. The answer is as you start to feel more deeply connected to a deeper intelligence than your own, that becomes so much more inspiring and uplifting, that the time that you spend on your own little stuff just diminishes because it's not that great.
Right.
You know?
And I love that you're bringing up that point, Judy, because I think that sometimes part of the understanding is an understanding of psychology, in which that our feelings come from thought.
Yeah.
And that lets us know that suffering is a result of our thinking.
Yeah.
That can be looked at in a narrow way, and in a way that is dismissing someone's suffering.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about that and what you've seen around that.
It's interesting. I had a client yesterday that was a new client. This just came to mind when you asked that. Who, if you were to tell a story, her life sounds like a really bad country song. Like she lost her dog and her truck and her lover and her house and her job, and she's got nothing, and everybody's gone, and she's abandoned. And it really does. If you're listening to it, you think, oh my God, somebody could really write a song about this. But for her, it's terrible. She's very, very. When I first started talking to her, and I just said, tell me a little about yourself. And then she started on her story, and she was angry and disappointed and tearful and outraged and hurt and all these negative feelings, which do come from the fact that that's all she was thinking about. And I was sitting there listening to her, and I said, so how old are you now? And she said, 54. And I said, wow. I said, you've got a lot of years left to start something new in your life. And she said, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, look, everybody's left. Your parents have fired you. She was helping her parents, and they got angry. They had a bad relationship anyway. But anyway, they fired her as a helper. Her lover left her. Her lover of 30 years walked out on her. And her, all these things happened. She lost her job because of COVID, and she was working in a restaurant, and she is losing her house because she can't pay her rent, and all of these things. And I said, it's like the universe has cleared the decks for you. Everything that was creating pain in your life is gone. And it left you. You didn't even have to get rid of it. So to me, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm thinking, well, yeah, you could think about that and kind of go back through it and all the pain and agony of those moments. Or you can think, wow, I'm as free as a bird. And it shows you. And I said, doesn't that kind of show you how easily our thinking, the perspective that we have in our own thinking really changes the feeling state that we're experiencing in the moment. So like, yes, every time you think those thoughts about how mad you are at your lover and how disappointed you are in your parents, and you're going to feel really bad, because that's how it is. And it's really horrible to feel that way. And my heart goes out to you. I hate to see you suffer like that. But if you happen to think about it differently, you're going to feel different. And so she said, well, like, what would I do different? And I said, I don't know. I mean, it's like, it's your life, but what would you like to do? Well, it turns out that she somehow in the process of her life had gotten training as an esthetician. And if she had her druthers, she would be an esthetician. She really loved it. And she's very interested in it. She had kind of an interest in science, and she has a degree and she has a certificate. And she kind of forgot about it. And so she said, well, I guess I'd really like to be an esthetician, but, right now, because of COVID, I can't do that. And I said, well, is your certificate current? She said, no, I'd probably have to take some more courses. And I said, well, COVID, you got nothing else to do. You can sit home and brood about your lost love, or you can take a course. And she said, well, but I don't have any money. And I said, well, don't worry about that. Just, put your sights in the direction you want to go and see what happens. Because in my experience, things come together for people when their intentions are clear to them. And I can't explain that, but it's always happened to me. So, and most of the people I know, all of a sudden somebody dies and leaves them just the right amount of money, or they get an offer for part-time, something or other, something comes up. And if you keep your eyes open, something comes up. So about 2/3 of the way through the conversation, she says, I feel much better than I did when I started talking to you. And I said, it's because you're talking about now and your future, not what happened in the past. Now, she was like, could not wait. She made another appointment like in a couple of days because she couldn't wait a week. She said, I cannot wait a week to talk to you again because I feel so. And I said, well, why is this so exciting to you? She said, honey, I've been in therapy for 30 years and I've always felt worse until today. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason is people taking that connection, like you mentioned, that your feelings create your thoughts, seriously, as though the thoughts had a life of their own. Mm. See, they're missing the depth of your feelings. What creates your feelings? Or your thoughts, your thoughts create your feelings. What creates your thoughts? You do. Mm-hmm. So if you take it one step back, it's an accountability thing. I don't need to be blamed. Mm-hmm. I just understand how the system works. I understand that if I think of pink, I'm going to feel whatever feelings I have about pink. Maybe I'll think about my little girl, or I'll think about, this color I really like or color I don't like. Everybody's different. But if I have to think about pink to get that feeling. And if I don't like that feeling, I have to think about something else. Mm-hmm. But I can't be blamed for what I feel while I'm thinking, because that's the way it works. It just works that way. So as long as I choose and dwell on and ruminate about all my negative thoughts, I'm just going to feel terrible. And people should have compassion for that, because if you don't understand where it's coming from, you can't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. And see, that's where the blame comes from. People start blaming themselves because they don't understand that before thought is the ability to think, is mind, is the capacity to continually create new thought. So if you just say, well, your thoughts create your feelings, and you think, well, I have these random thoughts and I feel terrible, well, then you're kind of screwed. Because we do have random thoughts. There's no question about it. You never know. You're going to hear something on the radio or see the news or something, and you'll have a thought that makes you feel terrible because it's the shadow of that thought. And if you don't know that the thought was something you thought, that there's behind that thought is all the energy of this universal power that we have to think anything, then we can't fix it because we're caught up and so we try to fight it. When you try to fight it, then you just feel worse because you got to keep it around. to deal with it. You can't deal with something that isn't there. So I think that that's the problem, is when you look at the principles through the lens of psychology, which we have done in the past and which Sid always roundly objected to. But when you look at it through the lens of psychology, you're looking at it from your personal thinking. Without wisdom and without mind and without that deeper connection to all the energy of the universe, to all the infinite possibilities of thought. So it explains why you feel so bad. Yeah, you've got a head full of upset thoughts, but it doesn't tell you how to fix it. It doesn't tell you that you're the source of all of it, but not because you're a bad person. It's deliberately thinking bad thoughts to make yourself feel bad. It's because you didn't know. When as soon as you know, then, and I mean, people, as soon as they know, honestly, Rohini, as soon as people really, know with a capital K, know, oh, wow, I am in charge of me. I really am in charge of me. I'm creating the universe that I experience. I'm not creating the universe that's there, but I'm creating my experience of that universe. And I've got choice about what I do with it. That's the freedom. That's where freedom comes from. Freedom comes from setting yourself free from the prison of your own most frightening thoughts. But you can't do that unless you can look behind you and go, wow, bigger than me. I'm just the tiny vehicle through which this amazing energy is flowing. And if I tap into that, then I don't have to be miserable, but I can be. And it's going to happen sometimes because I really can't control every thought that pops into my mind, and it's fine. It's not a scary thing anymore. And that's taking the fear out of it is what helps people. And I think it's a shame to just narrow the focus. I think it's an important thing to understand the relationship between thoughts and feelings, but I think it's a shame to not understand it in the context of it being a byproduct of this incredible universal formless system that's driving the whole process. Yeah.
And what I hear, and when you really open up that lens and see what's behind it, that experience, as you said so beautifully earlier in this call, that it naturally calls us forward in a way that's cooperative, seeing the connections. Like, it doesn't mean that it's just about personal well-being, that in that experience of knowing that we're connected to all of life, we're going to be more likely to take actions that are in alignment with honoring all of life.
Right.
And have that be what creates change in this world of form, that they're intimately connected.
That's right. And it's funny, my grandson, for example, has he's an artist, and he's it's a very deep little soul, if I do say so myself, but he is. And he's 21, and this time is especially hard for him because it really completely tore his life apart. He was going to be a senior in college, and he's taking a gap year because they're opening, he goes to an art college, and the studio is going to be closed, and they're going to do everything online. And he said, what would be the point of studying art online? I can watch YouTube videos about art for free, So he's taking a gap year, and of course it's hard to find a job. And so he's decided, his parents own a building on 5 acres of property that his father's dream ultimately is to turn it into a community art center. But right now the property is kind of gone to seed. It's got some beautiful plants and trees on it, but it's also got weeds and all kinds of impediments, and it's on a steep hill. And he had this dream of creating a kind of Machu Picchu experience on this hill, and making it beautiful, clearing it and trimming the trees and planting beautiful flowers, and his whole perspective changed. First he was kind of mad because he's actually living in the building because he can. There's an apartment up on the top of it, and why not? It's free. And he thought, I could spend this whole year creating this beautiful garden, and it would be part of the art center someday. And or I could spend the whole year sitting here feeling bad about not being able to go back to school. I think I'll do the garden. But in order for him to think of the garden, he had to not want to be miserable.
Right.
It's really easy to be miserable, find 1,000 reasons why you're miserable that are all very valid reasons, and then go, well, you see, I'm miserable because look what's going on. Or you can sit there and go, I really don't like being miserable. And I've just got to, let my mind go somewhere else for a while and see what comes up. And then he had this vision for this hillside, and he's working on it, and he's thrilled, and he's really happy. And people in the neighborhood are interested now, and people are coming, bringing in plants, and, why don't you plant some of this and that kind of thing. And he's got a little garden going, so he's got fresh vegetables, and he's helping other people plant gardens. And, it's a way to honor the planet and do something nice that he'll learn from. And sooner or later, he'll go back to school, or he won't, maybe he'll move on. It doesn't matter. As long as he's not brooding about it and feeling bad about it, I don't really care if he goes back or not. It's up to him.
Yeah.
But to me, that's what resilience is. It's those moments when we feel really angry and upset and furious and pissed off and all these terrible things, and blaming and wanting revenge and all the things that people go through, and suddenly go, I really hate feeling this way. There's got to be something different I can be doing. And then suddenly your mind clears, and suddenly something comes to mind that is the answer. So to me, his garden is like my client's remembering that she has a certificate in aesthetics, which she can renew.
Right.
She had totally forgotten about it.
And on that end, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I something came to mind for me when you're talking about the flow of thought.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the English canal system. There's a very elaborate canal system in England. It made me think that, I don't know, we have a tendency to shut the gates, lock the flow of water, and just like want to look what's in front of us, particularly if we're having troublesome thinking. And then all that happens is we create this sort of stagnation. Right. And really it's, to sort of open the gates and keep that flow continuing allows us to sort of really be open to that flow and that fresh new thinking, that fresh new positive thinking.
Yeah. That's a beautiful metaphor for that.
I know, it just sort of came to mind.
That's lovely.
And what I'm hearing too is that, as you're saying, there's very legitimate reasons for people to be upset. It's not that we're saying that there aren't legitimate reasons for people to have suffering. There's injustice in the world. There's things that are absolutely with a lot of room for improvement. But what I hear you saying is that we can empower ourselves through looking to that deeper place within and to see what our next action is related to that. And it's not about we do that and then we feel fine and then we don't want to do anything in the world. Your grandson's found a way to express himself with the garden.
Which is going to be shared with a whole community.
Exactly. Yeah. And that natural, like what is natural to us will ultimately also be a benefit to all in whatever way is authentic to us. So it's not like there's one way that everybody needs to do it. We need to look within and see what are we called forward to do. Right. And from that place of love and understanding inside of ourselves, that we'll naturally want to share that in a way with others.
And that's like everybody's got a different talent, or a different calling. And yet if everybody's moving in that direction, if everybody's coming from love and understanding, you're just going to create this huge tapestry of loving, understanding things that are of benefit to all things. There's no way you can lose. And it's funny because I'm kind of an old hippie, I very well remember, because I was quite young and very, very touched by the idea of, peace and love. And I remember, in the early marches, putting flowers in the soldiers' guns, and the things that dancing in the streets and singing folk songs, and really believing that love would end war. We really did believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and this happens so often, and I just pray that it doesn't happen now with what's going on, because there is a lot of beauty in some of the positive protests that are going on, things that are going on in social justice now. But there's also always the potential for it to go sour if people get insecure or angry or frustrated or impatient.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed to me that there was this turning point, without going into a lot of detail, where suddenly, instead of putting flowers in the soldiers' guns and saying nice things and talking about love and peace on earth and and sex and drugs and rock and roll and all the positive things, all of a sudden we're tearing down colleges. I mean, the people are occupying buildings and burning records and closing down classrooms and taunting the police, and it just turns so ugly. It turns so ugly so suddenly. And I got frightened by that. And at that time, then I was married, and we ended up being moved overseas because my husband was actually in the Air Force. That's a whole other story. But so I missed. I wasn't there, but I couldn't have gone out and done that. I just couldn't. It wasn't in my nature, to go. I liked the flowers and the dancing, and I wasn't too into the, taunting the police and and I certainly would never have burned a college president's office or something. I just couldn't do that. And the funny thing was that the whole thing turned so unpleasant, and it really created a lot of hatred and a lot of intergenerational resentment. And then we all got bitter. People got very bitter. That's the generation that started out with such hope and optimism, became embittered. And I see that same hope now in some of these people, the young people that are out now marching. And the one thing that we know now that wasn't known in the world back in the 60s is there's a way to stay centered and stay in that feeling of love and understanding, and stay in that generous spirit of, let's work together towards a better world without doing anything ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that that's how this turns out. It could, and we can help in that regard. And I think one of the things that all of us who are involved in the principles can do is really reach out to those people who have the youth and the energy and the time and the future to really, really want to work on social justice, to saying, remember the state of mind that you're in while you're doing it.
Yeah.
And remember where your thinking is coming from, and don't follow the thoughts that lead you astray.
Yeah. There's the opportunity for beautiful coming together, and to not sort of shy away from political issues or social justice issues, and to have the understanding be a benefit, so that there can be a sustaining force in that way, where we're able to resource ourselves from that deeper place inside of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's going to make a big difference. And maybe the fact that the principles are exponentially spreading now, and more people in the world are aware of this higher level of consciousness, that will make progress.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of getting sad and angry and disappointed and having it turn the wrong direction. So I'm very hopeful. I really am. I've some of the younger people that are that have just been randomly interviewed on the street are so wise.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so impressed with the way people talk, and the forgiveness and understanding that they have for people, that I think was lacking in our generation. It's like we got kind of angry with adults, and You know, it's funny because this is a funny thing. I grew up in the generation that where our mantra was don't trust anyone over 30, as though none of us were ever going to be over 30.
Janet or Janet,
Oh, I'm so sorry. Here we go. Sorry. Anyway, so on my 30th birthday, I thought, whoa, geez, now what do I do? No one's going to trust me. And I didn't feel any older than I did when I was 29. You know, it was kind of like, so that was problematic. You know, but that it goes to show you how you can get attached to an idea without any real thought to the implications of that idea, which is what are you going to do when you turn 30, silly? So and it was like we also in my generation was also very attached to what was then known as ZPG, which was zero population growth, which is like one of the dumbest ideas on the planet. Because, you know, essentially, what are you going to do when you run out of people? You know? And but we all, you know, nobody wanted to bring children into this world in this immoral war, and it was this high-minded thought, you know. And then people started getting married and thinking, oh wait, I'd like to have a baby, you know. So I think we matured kind of late, but you know, hopefully we can help people to bypass all of those, taking those little silly slogans and thoughts so seriously, with the understanding that our personal thinking is just not that important. You know, what we want is wisdom. What we want is love and understanding and flowing through wisdom.
Well, thank you so much, Judy. Really appreciate you taking the time to share with us and to share with our group. I know that they're going to really appreciate hearing from you.
Yeah, Judy, I could listen to you all day, every day. And I really hope you'll come back and speak again.
Oh, I'd love to. I could listen to you guys, and I really love everything you do. I really do. So anytime, just give me a call.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're sending you lots of love, and take care.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye, Judy.
Bye-bye.
Take care.